Because in late Victorian visual language, a black ribbon is a mourning marker. It recasts the scene as a possible memorial rather than a lively portrait. Noticing it opens the door to postmortem customs and the near-invisible hidden mother technique, turning studio tricks and stillness into signs of death, devotion, and something waiting in the dark. Lean closer, hold your breath with me, and if you wish to keep seeing what most people miss, subscribe now so you don't look away when the silver begins to remember. The picture does not like to be looked at alone. A Nursery, 1896, looks back at you through glass fogged by time. The print is small enough to fit a pocketbook, bitten by a soft oval vignette that eats the corners, the image feathering to nothing like the slow exhale of a candle in a draft. Sepia bleeds into brown. The highlights are the color of old tea. The air inside the frame seems granular, as if made of powdered light. If you tilt the card to catch the lamp, a silvering bloom appears where the blacks have begun to tarnish, a cold shine like scales under skin. It is not quite a room and not quite a stage, though the walls and the rug and the high chair and the cradle and the little china dog all insist on being ordinary. Your eye learns their shapes in a second and then fails to accept them, as if your mind knows the trick before your gaze does. You could call it a nursery. They did. A rocking horse watches from the left margin, jaw open, teeth carved in, a mane cut from real hair that has dried to stiff wire. There is a lithograph on the wall, a pastoral with swans that have smeared themselves into the river, the ink drifting at the edges where exposure and fix were stingy. A short chest of drawers stands too perfectly squared to the camera, its brass pulls catching a pinprick glint. On top of it, a rattle lies crosswise atop an open hymn book, its coral handle pointing not quite at the child. The page edges are dark, a long exposure letting the paper consume contrast until it all sinks toward the same tone. To the right, a crib under a lace canopy sags in its middle, the weight of sleep held there once and no longer. A cloth doll sits slumped in the crib, one button eye torn off and re-sewn too low, so it appears to be peering into the mattress seam. The child is at the center, in that smug oval of the lens's best behavior, propped upright in a chair with turned spindles and a cushion that shows the faintest suggestion of a seam misaligned with the chair. The baby, no, older than a baby, an infant on the cusp of toddlerhood, wears a gown of astonishing whiteness, though you begin to see it is not the white of linen, but the spectral white of high silver density, so that folds glow more than they exist. The gown pours over the chair as if made of water, pooling into brightness and then draining away into the low-slung pool of the vignette. The child's hair, if you can call it that, is a suggestion, a smudge above the brow. The face is turned a degree to the right, the gaze not quite at the lens. The mouth is soft, parted. The iris is red as two pale coins, almost the same value as the sclera because the process forgives nothing and renders everything bones and stars. Do not look at the eyes yet. Look at the hands. The left hand lies upon the dress, two fingers tucked under a fold as if a gesture had been caught in the act of being completed. The right hand has been tied. You would not have seen it if not for the bow. It is a small bow, simply made, the tails uneven, a ribbon pressed flat and then sprung back slightly as the picture dried and the albumen shrank. The ribbon is black. The black is not quite matte. It gleams wetly at the tips like an eel's back. It is tied just above the wrist, the knot at the inside, as if someone wanted it hidden in plain sight. The ribbon is the wrong color for adornment in a child. It is the right color for something else. Around the room, other negatives rush toward you that you did not notice. The absence of toys in the crib. The way the rocking horse's belly is dusty, but the saddle is not. The little mirror above the washstand turned to face the wall. The curtain tied back and tied again, tight enough to bruise fabric. The clock on the mantel with both hands at 12, as if it has chosen the easiest answer to a difficult question. A vase holds a cluster of lily of the valley, their bells so white they flare to nothing. The letter propped against the base of the vase has a border, black, thin, precise. When you notice the border, you return to the ribbon, and the ribbon begins to speak. It says, "The dress required contrast, yes, but this is not that." It says, "There is a language of the household that knows how to announce its losses without raising its voice." It says, "Closer. Look near the child's right ear, just above the hairline. See the shadow that should not be so vertical? See the slight intrusion of a rod ending in a hook? This is the skull brace, the headrest, a posing stand, meant to make living children still enough to steal their image. And when the living cannot hold themselves even with that help, a ribbon, a pin, a coil of ribbon at the wrist says what the mouth cannot. The oval eats the corners. You lean closer still, your own reflection sealing to the glass, your breath a translucent stain. The edges of the frame are scalloped cardboard, and you imagine the photographer's fingers pressing a mount into glue, the sticky slap, the hiss of breath through teeth as they smooth air bubbles with a bone folder. There is a black border around the image. No, a vignette that does not end in crisp line but soft feather, an artificial twilight forced down at printing to draw the viewer's gaze to what matters. Your gaze is obedient. It narrows. It falls into the picture like a coin into a well. If you were to step into the room now, you would hear no sound but the soft crackle of soot in the grate and the breathless hush of upholstery. But once the room made a sound, a brief metal throat clearing, the shutter dropping. The shutter's voice was short and sensible. It spoke in the language of seconds. 1, perhaps 2, maybe 3 if the day had turned and the skylight was hazed with smoke. In the long fraction of that time, small motions leave their ghosts as trailing skirts of themselves. See the curtain at the edge of the frame, a little blurred where a draft has made it sway. See the toy soldier fallen on his side, a smudge next to his cap where a tiny hand touched him and then the hand went away. See the hands of the adult who did not go away. See how they are absent. See where they are. Look to the right margin of the child's chair. Look into the rug, where the pattern repeats too exactly and then abruptly stops in a wrinkle that is not part of the weave. The wrinkle resolves into a fold into a tent, the tent into a shape that cannot be furniture. At first you may mistake it for the throw from the back of the chair having slumped forward, but the weight of it is wrong. It suggests a human under it, the way a mound suggests a grave. The fabric is matte, thick, unreflective. Crepe is like that. Morning crepe old enough that the starch has given way and the black eats light. In the lower part of that fold, just above the baseboard, 4 ridges are arranged like knuckles pressing from within. Not quite a hand, not quite nothing. A cousin to a hand. A memory of the knuckles that fitted a ring now turned around so its stone does not catch the eye. The curtain blur is nothing compared to the stillness of that hill of cloth. If someone was beneath it, they were taught how to kneel and not tremble their bones, how to hold breath until the shutter came, how to keep their grief from moving their shoulders by even a breath's width. The photographer would have told them, he had phrased it kindly many times, please be the furniture. Please be the wall. Please be something that is always there. You can almost imagine him, the man behind the tripod, the focusing cloth a black hood over his head, his mouth warm and damp from breathing in his own breath. The lens he uses is fast for its day, a proud brass barrel with a patina where many fingers have polished it, the iris set wide in the flat light. He has rolled the studio's shade to soften the skylight. You know this because the light on the child's face is from above and a little to the left. There is a soft shadow beneath the chin, and the glare on the brass pull is even and tired. Behind his feet, a tray of hypo in the darkroom breathes a smell that is not quite salt and not quite sulfur. He knows tricks to make children behave, rattles, buttons, sugar on his tongue, and tricks to make the dead behave, bandage, brace, gloved hands under the hem of a gown. He has given instructions to the woman under the cloth that he will hold the shutter at his hip, and when he says now, he will count to 2 in his head, and when he raises his finger, she may breathe again. It is wrong to say she is hidden. She is not. She fills the right side of the frame with her refusal to be seen. A veil hangs from her forehead to her lap, heavy and unembroidered, a small buckling of light at her temple where it meets a pin. The veil bleeds into the background in the way ink meets wet paper. Your eye slides off it the way a drop of rain slides down a sash and then vanishes into the seam. If you stare long enough, your eye will correct itself the way it corrects for darkness. You will begin to see a sweep of sleeve and then a suggestion of a shoulder. And then, suddenly, you will know where her face is. And you will be sorry you know it, because it is turned toward the child with an angle of attention so absolute that anything across the room must feel as if it has become a secret. You will not be able to go back to not knowing. The ribbon will tighten all over again. There is something else. It hides in plain sight the way small cruelties do. Look just behind the child's head. The hook you saw, look again. It rises on a slender shaft that has been painted a gray that does not exist in the room. A studio gray that pretends to be shadow so it will not attract your eye. At its base, it is braced by a tripod footprint you might mistake for the shadow of a spindle. The hook cradles the skull like a mother's palm that does not tire. Once used to keep living people from nodding or flinching during long exposures, it has been pressed into a different service now. It is the hand that never trembles, the grip that holds until the work is done. It is the human desire to cheat time, lacquered and screwed together and set on the rug. The child's right foot is visible, a small half-moon of fullness where the gown lifts. The toes do not press against the fabric. The calf does not flex. The right hand, bound with its ribbon, cannot fall. You would not know to ask where the weight of the child's body goes unless you had ever held a sleeping child through the whole of the night, as the hours ruined you. The weight goes down. Even the dead are heavy. Listen to the room. It is silent. Do not be fooled by how the silence feels neutral. Listen for what has been removed from the room to make this silence possible. The house is a drum, and this room is a room in it. In other rooms, there are footsteps, voices hushed so one kind of sound will not be made. That sudden intake of communal breath when a baby cries. Here it will not be made. The rocking horse does not rock. The doll's button eye does not wink with the sun. Dust hangs without a pulse of warm air to stir it. In the lower left, near the frame, there is a little mark, a hair caught in the contact print, its curve black and perfect as a notation mark on music. It looks like a symbol for hold. Sometimes the eye hides things from the mind until the mind has the right sorrow to accept them. When you first looked, the nursery's niceness protected you. Now the niceness has turned traitor. The ribbon's black has migrated elsewhere in the picture. It is in the narrow bands around the handles of a toy chest. It is in the straight summer of the mother's dress under the veil. It is in the band around the arm of something you thought was a chair cover, but now you know is a human arm with a crepe band around the bicep. They have arranged the scene to say, we live here. We mourn here. We will have a picture of here so that what left here can be brought here forever. And yet, the studio sneaks through. See the painted backdrop past the cradle? You did not call it painted because you did not want to cheapen the room. But the park behind the window has brushstrokes in the hedge that do not belong to leaves. The horizon is too high. The tree's leaves have earned the same blur as the ruffle on the skirt because they are equally near to the lens. A walk in the background would take you into chalk. The rug's edge lifts at the left where it meets a baseboard. A fold has been pinned to look like a hearthrug and the pin slipped, so a lip of canvas shows. The little mirror turned to face the wall is not a morning custom. It is a studio custom, for mirrors show what must not be shown. A man under a cloth, a pole of a brace, a room that is not this room at all. You are not meant to solve it, but you have begun. The ribbon has taught you the language enough to sound out other words. The child's lips have a small dark line at the center where the bow, once placed there by a mother's finger to soften, has dried. Dead lips keep shape with careful effort and then slowly betray the attempt. There is a drop of something dark, smaller than a tear but in the right place for one, caught in the corner of the child's eye and not slid down because there is no blink to draw it. The gown's hem shows a waterline where vinegar water was used to lift some late stain. Across the dress, near the ribcage, there is a shallow dish of brightness that might be caused by the weave, but also might be the hard plane beneath the dress catching light. Breathing makes hollows and hills out of cloth. Absence leaves a field. He would have taken more than one plate. He must have. The first would have been a test. He would have focused on the child's lashes, for that is where focus always either lives or fails. He would have called the woman under the cloth to adjust a degree to the left or right. Lift the head just so, just so. The hand holding the child's hand would have stiffened into a clamp. He would have found a way to cover the hand so the clamp would read like tenderness. The ribbon does that work. He would have kept the exposure shy of too long so that accidental motions would blur less into water. The dress is crisp where it could be. He would have stopped down and accepted a longer exposure for the sake of depth, but not too long. He would have said now, and the room would have listened until the shutter lifted its lid and put it back down. He would have counted in his head. 2. He would have seen how the glow of the gown and the oval would cradle the child, because he knows where people look even when they insist that they do not. Do not look away. Do not rest your eyes on the safe territories, the horse's snarl, the rattle, the drawers, the silly china dog. Do not look yet at the eyes. The eyes are patient. You must look at the woman's veil first and let your mind accept that it is in the room. Trace its edge from crown to knee. Then see where it goes beyond the knee, how it runs down toward the baseboard, and then crooks to form a right angle where it meets the boot that is not quite where a boot should be. Her foot was numb when the picture was taken. It was numb because she had been kneeling for longer than she thought possible, and she was like to faint but for the thought that if she did, she would ruin it all. The photographer would tell her that, if she fainted, they would try again, of course. They would try again, but the child did not know what was being done in its name, and the child deserved to not be called back into the room more than was necessary. The boy was impossible at 3 months. The girl was an angel at 6. The boy at 8 days did not complain even when the brace tasted his skull. The girl at a year was stubborn and odd and loved the way the lamp hissed in the parlor and held a crumb in her fist all afternoon. The woman under the cloth can hold her numb foot until the shutter is done. She can do anything but keep time from acting like time. The man behind the lens has learned how to speak to grief. He does not say your child, he says your little one. He does not say again, he says another. He does not use certain tenses. He keeps his mouth around small fixable words. He recovers a small cough with the heel of his palm and does not let it become a sound. He arranges the objects brought from the house according to the grammar of parts and wholes. The child's comb, the talc, the tin lamb, the small shoes with buttons like planets. He places them as if to say, there was a world. He gives the mother the veil and asks if she would like to be seen or not seen. She says she would like to be here. He says he will make it so no one else can make the decision for her when the picture is gone to cousins and to acquaintances and to people who will put it in shoeboxes. She kneels. He raises the shutter back. He says now, the lilies of the valley ring like spoons on glass that no one can hear. The clock's hands are not at 12. They are at the summer of the day when the light from the skylight is generous, a little after 1. But the photographer knows to lift the hands to midnight in the print, to empty the picture of time. It makes everything easier to place. He has done this before. He will do it again. His own mouth has pressed itself into a morning shape so often that sometimes when he drinks tea, the tea knows and runs to one side. You are outside the picture. You are peering in. And yet, if you lean too close, you will begin to feel something move in your chest. A sensation like a held note lengthening beyond where breath allows. It is not panic. Panic is noisy. This is not noisy. It is a pause that ignores you. It is the pause that comes between two waves that look the same and kill differently. Do not be afraid of it. Notice it. There. In that pause, the room solves a few of the questions you brought to it. Why the ribbon? Because the child needed a small word that says what cannot be printed without saying anything so crude as the fact. Why the veil? Because the mother wished not to be looked at while her looking was so bright that it would have burned the emulsion. Why the cradle with no bedding? Because you do not lie a dressed infant in a cradle when the laces are not yet cut, and because the cradle is the idea of a cradle, and the child is the idea of a child. Why the mirror turned to the wall? Because a mirror tells the truth even when truth is the wrong thing for a picture. Why the rocking horse's jaw? Because the carver believed in teeth. Why your breath fogging the glass? Because you forget you must breathe. You must be careful now. The third turn is the cruelest, and you must allow it to happen with as much courtesy as you can. For it is not the picture's fault that you are late to this. It is not your fault either. You were taught to find children in pictures and to smile at them with a small ache that does not cost much. The ache costs more here. Pay. Pay attention. Pay breath. Pay the comfort of pretending this is not what it is. She wanted a likeness. That is the small word for memorial. She wanted a thing that would endure in the drawer and the locket and the layered pages of the album they take out once a year, and then twice, and then never. She wanted a face to hold in her head that was not the last face, because the last face had taken on a gravity that moved furniture. In the night she felt the child roll its weight toward the wall and away from her, though she knew the child could not roll. She wanted the sound of the child to be something other than the last sound. The photographer, for all his tricks, cannot provide sound, but he can give her a shape to leave on a table. He cannot give her breath, but he can give her the ghost of breath, the small parted mouth of a child in a long second. He cannot give her the weight of the child in her arms, but he can ask her to hold that weight under a crepe that stinks of dye. He cannot give her a living room again, but he can give her the imitation of a room to put in a drawer. She is willing. She would hold longer. He does not ask her to. He stills her. He stills himself. The ribbon holds the hand that would unclench. The pose holds the neck that would sag. He sets the lens to wide and counts. He lowers his gaze because he knows the look of a mother looking at a child like this is something that will make his hands shake, and he cannot afford to shake. He looks at the baseboard and speaks to it. Now, the shutter drops. The room burns into the emulsion. Light solves itself into silver. Silver makes a promise: keep me in the dark and I will last. Wash me as if I were a wound. The water in the trays goes brown with grief. The photographer rocks the tray with his hand and the image swims up as if from deep. Do not be surprised that the child looks like a painting. This was the plan. Paintings are how permanence was taught before silver forgot its manners and kept what it should not. The eyes are too bright only because everything else is too much like a hill under snow. The mouth is parted because the morning air was sharp. The hair is a smudge because hair made of light and chemicals is always a smudge. The ribbon is black because it is the shadow of a word you cannot say. Something changes when you know. Everything in the picture moves a degree toward the real and away from itself. The rocking horse's mane has a crust where a child's drool dried. You see it now. The rug has a spot that is not a pattern but the stew of years. You see it now. The chair's cushion has been sat on by someone who did not weigh very much. You see the long dent where a cat slept and got up. The mother's boot has a scuff where a step was taken the day after something, the scuff of a body that suddenly weighed more. The lily of the valley are not clear enough. You feel a wave of anger that anyone would have brought them into the picture with their message of early and forever. The thin black border on the card was chosen from a drawer that also contained gold, and someone stood there and held the black for a long while before nodding once, a small nod that cost a day. Everything turns toward the person who is not in the room, and then the room pays you back. It is small, subtle, mean in its mercy. You have been good. You have done the work. The picture will give you one thing. The child's mouth is parted. Have you been avoiding the eyes? You may look now. Look straight at them. Many children in these pictures have eyes opened after. The retoucher earns his bread. He sits with a pencil as thin as a hair and draws that small crescent at the base of the iris and the highlight that says wet. He is good at it. You will know if this has been done because the pupil will be too round and the light too placed. This retoucher is either very good or the eyes are not meddled with. They are placed not like drawn circles, but like pools that meet a wind. The outer edges bleed a tiny bit. The inner corners are dulled by wet that does not wet anymore. Where a light should be reflected there is a light, but it is too low and to the outside for a skylight. It is too like the lamp by your desk now, the one you leaned in with. Do not be clever. Dismiss it as a trick of angles. Dismiss it as coincidence. There are only so many places a light can be in an eye. You have placed yourself where a light might be. Of course it looks like a thing you did. Of course it is not. There is a soft spot at the upper mask of the picture, where the vignette began too far in and was burned back with a finger dipped in developer. It makes a light fingerprint in darkness. Not literal. It is as if a finger had cupped the picture from above. It says later. It says less. It says leave. The woman under the veil stares toward the child's ear, a focus point that, in the long second, gives her something to prevent a sound. The child is here the way a shadow is in a shallow well. You could stop here. You could put down the card, wipe the glass with the cuff of your sleeve to burn the fog of your breath, and return the picture to the album. You could accept that the ribbon has done its work on you, and that you now share with this family a small chamber of their house, which is all anyone can ask of a picture. You could, but there is a sound at your back. It is not the shutter. It is the sound after the shutter, which is the tiny click of the mechanism admitting it has done what it can. But you hear it now, anachronistic, where nothing metal should be. You turn. No one. The room you stand in is yours. There is your lamp, your chair. The window accepts the dark without argument. There is the album on your desk. The air smells faintly of closed paper and the corner of your table. Turn back. The ribbon in the picture is the same ribbon it was, but the tails have shifted half a hair's width. You know this because you memorized the lie of them. One tail pointed toward the thumb. Now it points toward the finger. The bow has inverted a question. You hold the card closer to your nose to scold yourself, you with your love of things that move when they cannot. The glass fogs. The fog condenses. You have a child's breath at this distance, soft and quick despite yourself. You notice a smear on the lower right of the glass that is new. The smear is shaped like the heel of a palm. It is exactly where a small hand might push if asked to reach through. Your heart kicks. This is not a jump scare. That is something else, a trick of bangs and honest curtains. This is not that. This is a small rewrite of where you were in the room and where the room is in you. It is not supernatural so much as a thing that says, I can go two ways. Watch. The mother under the veil has been exactly where she has been for 100 and however many years. That does not change. She remains the fixed point. The child is the fixed point. The world slides around them. But there is a third presence. It is the thing that made silver keep this shape. It is the thing that activates when a look is offered. In the laboratory, they would call it memory. They would say the halides of silver are sensitive. They would say you offer a look and the look rearranges a lattice. You would say that is a nice story about science that does not involve me. But you are wrong. You are involved. You offer your look to the picture, and the picture accepts the gift and gives something back the only way it can. It revises you. Your sense of time shifts a spine's width. The child's eyelids, which never changed, now feel as if they might change. The mother's knuckles become the right knuckles for holding. The background, painted and foolish, smears a little deeper into night. Or perhaps your lamp has guttered. Did you adjust the wick? No, the flame is what it was. The night is what it was. The card is what it is. And yet, the little mirror in the picture is turned to the wall. But glass is a stubborn species of truth. Even turned, it admits a seam of brightness where light sneaks between wood and silver. That seam has broadened. It is only a fraction of a hair, but you, a person who can diagnose grief from a ribbon, see it. Behind that seam, you expect the blankness of the back of a mirror. What you see is a sliver of something that should be you. It is not you. It is a low wedge of black like the edge of a veil. You drop your eyes. You are kind in that way. You do not stare a woman's grief in its secret face when she has gone to the trouble to veil it. You rest your gaze on the rattle. It has a coral handle carved in the shape of a branch, forked at the end, as if two choices were presented and one was never the right. Along the metal bell there are small dents. A child's teeth do that. The rattle rests across a hymn book. The title on the hymn book is too small to read, but the type is worn in the way type gets when it is touched only on a handful of pages. The ribbon's tails lie across the hymn book's corner in the way of something that will stain. The black seems to bleed at the edges where it meets the white dress. It is not a trick. The dye and crepe is a mean thing. It runs. It betrays the wearers. The third turn completed is this. You have been in a room with a memorial that has used you for what it needed. It needed you to know what it was. Not because knowing helps it, but because knowing is the only decent thing a witness can do when their presence is lawless. You cannot put your hands under the little warm back and take the weight. You cannot wet a rag and swab the gums. You cannot wake. You can look, and your looking is the closest thing the picture has to breath. So breathe for it. In the long, slow outskirts of that breath, there is an overlay in your mind, the nursery you live in, the nursery on the card, and a third space that is where you become indistinguishable from the photographer for a second, and the mother for a second, and the child for a second. In that third space, you are under the cloth. It is hot and smells like wool, and like the way a door frame smells when you put your nose to it and pretend you can smell the tree it was. Your fingers are on the brass tube. Your fingers are clever in the way tired people's fingers are. Careful, because they cannot afford not to be. Your face is a cave with a lamp at one end. You cannot see your own breathing body, only the image, upside down on the ground glass. The world a precarious boat you must steady. The child is inverted. The mother is inverted. You cradle the image like carrying water in a bowl. Someone in the other world inhales. In this world, you say now. The room freezes, and then, overlapping that freeze, you are on your knees. Your joints are stones. You did not always have joints like this. They used to be made of something like rubber. They let you run without thinking and sit and then leap up to answer a cry. They are not that anymore. The crepe stinks. Someone has tucked the edge of your veil into your bodice to keep it from wandering, because you could not think to. Your hands are under the gown. Your left thumb is touching the inside of the child's wrist, because you cannot stop yourself. Someone has tied a ribbon there because you could not stop yourself. Your mouth is in pieces. You arrange them into a shape that looks like a mouth that can be seen. You look where you were told to look, because if you look at the face, you will pull the cloth off and let the room see you as you are. You are the child. That is the easiest. You are tired, but not the kind of tired that sleep solves, the kind that daylight solves, if it would. Your body is large. Earth moved to your mouth and eyes. Your hand is bound. A small itch you cannot find. Your belly feels full of warm milk, which is impossible. Your mouth feels padded with cotton, which is possible. The room smells of something you loved and something you love now. Your neck is held by a hook that thinks it is a hand. You like it because it is a hand, The long second is the right speed for the world. When the shutter lifts its lid, something moves in the corner of everything, and it is your name, but they are not saying it aloud. They are holding it in the air and sharing it with each other inside their mouths. You return to yourself, a person in this century with your breath marking the glass, carrying a name you do not share with the room. The three spaces fold. The card is a card again. The nursery is a good story told by wood and cloth. The third space closes like an eye. You blink. The ribbon is a ribbon. The black border is a border. The lily of the valley are print. The little mirror shows only wood. The room has let you go. You have gotten closer than you should. You have been permitted to leave. Before you do, please, if you have not yet, subscribe to keep the vigil with us, to be the eyes that old silver expects and the hands that turn the pages no one else will, so we can ask the next picture what it remembers, and it will answer very quietly now.